That's why people have to do the classic goalpost shift. Trump didn't say he was going to remove everyone that crossed the border, okay? You think that's a rabid criminal that you have to get out of this country ASAP? Which is a very common story. Trump voter and business owner whose workers were detained by ICE speaks out.
Financially as well as emotionally. It takes a toll. You know, you get to know these guys. You become their friends, just not an employer, but a friend. And you see what happens to their family. It's quite a shock. They did everything right, and they all had their work permits. They all, a few of them have driver's licenses. They worked with me on the Navy base, which had to go through intense security, and they found out all about their past. And
no, this is good for you guys to hear, because a lot of people don't understand. Like, there are a ton of migrant workers, okay? There are a ton of migrant workers in this country that have the proper authorization, that have gone through rigorous background checks. Their immigration status is in limbo, like the lady that we just saw. For something so marginal, so inconsequential, she cashed a $200 fake check, okay? And then had her green card taken away in the process. That's a cruel-ass system, man. That is a ruthless and cruel-ass system. And it's the lack of care that we have as a society for some of these most marginalized people, some of the most vulnerable people that are simply just making ends meet, you know? They're here, they're working, they are going to ICE facilities with regular frequency to check in routinely. They have their court dates. They have their paperwork. They're trying to put pennies together so that they can get a lawyer to help them out throughout this process. And they're making pennies on the dollar on top of this. And then they're being called criminals and getting deported, ripped away from their families, ripped away from their neighborhoods, ripped away from their lives that they've developed here, that they've built here. Like dudes who have been working here in this country for multiple decades. You know what I mean? White people don't give a shit talking to a wall. I don't think that's true. I think that there are plenty of white people who do give a shit. But there are certain kinds of white people that don't, the racist kind. And Trump, and that number is much smaller than you think. That's my point. I mean, here's a white person who does give a shit now, because this is the leopards ate my face moment for him.
You become connected with them and more than just a boss employee.
You voted for Donald Trump?
Yes, I did.
If you had a chance to sit across the president like you do now with me, what would you say to him?
Well, you know, the buck stops there, right? I did not understand his wishes to go after people who are legally here and trying to do right by them and their families. What's up? And I didn't understand that that's what he was trying to do. From what I understood, from what he has said, and from what ICE officials have said, that is not at all what they're doing. And then all the representatives of them are stating the same thing. That's not what we're doing. We're going after the criminals. Well, what happened here?
Yeah, I mean, look, at a certain point, you also have to realize, like, when there is not a single, this guy's not watching my broadcast, man. You know, he's not a Hasanabi head. You all feel the way that you do when you're like, these guys are so dumb. But you have to remember, like, think about your parents. Some of your parents probably also have the same exact mentality. Okay. And part of the reason why they have that same exact mentality is because they're watching Fox, or even when they're watching MSNBC or CNN, up until Trump became president and started doing these deportations, there was very little coverage on how violent this was going to look like. And that's the reason why I place a lot of this blame on the Democratic Party as well, because they did not say a single damn thing. They did not counter message against this. They counter messaged. Not only did they not counter message against this, they messaged for this. They messaged in the direction, maybe not to the same severity, maybe not to the same level of ruthless cruelty, but they certainly wanted a militarized border. They wanted to fundraise for a piece of legislation that was going to do Trump's 2020 border policies. They did this on the campaign trail. They said, build the wall. They kept propping up. Nice to meet you, man. They kept propping up Biden's like deportations as a benefit. not talking about how devastating this actually was. The employer said they had their work permits. These are people here on an NTA before an IJ who entered illegally and were released pending immigration court. Yeah, on an NTA before an IJ, like immigration judge, you're saying, right? Like they got the proper authorization. There are a lot of people like this. There are a lot of people exactly like this. There are millions of people like this who come into the country, illegally. Yeah, notice to appear. NTA is notice to appear before an immigration judge who entered illegally and were released pending immigration court. Yeah. Now, what's crazy about the immigration court is that it works as a function. It works alongside the federal the federal agencies. So it's not like a separate entity. So when there's a woke president, they can be a little less restrictive. And then when there's a president like Donald Trump, he can use the immigration courts system as a mechanism to literally steal people, to kidnap people. That's why you see so many of those like gruesome images of people that are just like going to their regular court date. Okay, they're getting their notice to appear. They're appearing in court in front of an immigration judge thinking like, oh, I'm just going to get an extension, right? I'm going to get an extension. I'm going to get my work clearance. I've been here for like 10 years, whatever. This is what I've done every single time. And now that opportunity is being used to kidnap this person. Trump ain't so great when he starts to hurt your life, huh? I mean, like this guy is the classic example of like a dickhead business owner who also fell to the mercy of the overwhelming amount of like, there's so many criminal migrants out there. Immigration court system within the DOJ, so a part of the executive branch. Yes. You can get a work permit after accruing a certain amount of days of filing an asylum application, for example. Yeah. There are so many people like this who we could just like expeditiously process and give the proper permanent clearances for, right? But we don't do that. We just keep their immigration status in limbo. And that is by design. Same with DACA. Same with the DACA recipients. Deferred action on childhood arrival. 90% approval for amnesty for this program. The program itself is crazy. It is crazy rigid. You can't even fly out of the country and shit. You know what I mean? If you're on DACA, it's ridiculous. You have to have an unvarnished record, no crimes whatsoever. You have to go to college. You have to have a job, like all this shit. It is so rigid. And the fact that we don't give these people proper amnesty is insane. Dreamers is who I'm talking about. Yes. DACA, deferred action on childhood arrival. Remember, these are people who came into the country alongside their parents when they were a child. Okay. When they were a minor, they had no say in this process. And this country is all they know. They don't know any other country. They grew up here. This is their country. It's functionally no different than birthright citizenship. Can you report both sides and show ICE removing criminals as well? I can't. You want to know why I can't? Because the criminals that ICE is removing are already in jail because they're criminals. They've already been processed through the criminal justice system. That's why I can't show you both sides of this equation, because the people that they are removing right now, the people that they're deporting right now, the ones that have a criminal record are for incredibly minor shit. They're not like rapist decapitators or some shit that ICE is like bravely taking out of this country. Birth certificate says otherwise, says My Lottery. My Lottery is a great name for you. Yeah, you did hit the lottery, I guess. That makes you feel like you're better than these people. Chew My Bullets one says, can you report both sides and show ICE removing criminals as well? ICE is not removing criminals. That's why so many people turn around and say, well, they're criminals because they entered the country illegally. You know, that's why people have to do the classic goalpost shift. Trump didn't say he was going to remove everyone that crossed the border. Okay. He said he was going to go after these like drug dealer, vicious, violent types. They're deporting people that have been here for 20 years who have been checking in with ICE on a monthly basis. Since the agency even made these sorts of checks a requirement, they have the proper clearance and the authorization to work, okay? And they're removing people that have like a trespass from like 15 years ago. You think that's a rabid criminal that you have to get out of this country ASAP? Yeah, 65% of the detainments have no criminal record, and 93% had no violent convictions. And the 7% that I'm willing to bet, if we looked into it, the 7% that they have violent convictions are either like got in a bar fight, or the ones that actually have the heinous crimes on their record were already in prison and they're being removed from prison and being deported instead of going through the entire sentence. Understand that, because in an effort to justify why they're doing this, like for example, one of the things that they did was park ICE into Rikers Island in New York City. Why did they do that? Because they want to get people who have actually done any crimes whatsoever that are migrants to be deported, so they can beef up the numbers of criminals that they're apprehending and deporting. Okay. But even with all of that, because they have this ridiculous quota for, remember, a problem that doesn't exist, even with all of that, they have 7% violent convictions in the deportations. 7%. And even before these numbers came out, this is what my suspicion was. I told you that the majority of these people are not going to have any convictions whatsoever, and that the ones that do have some kind of conviction will be for like mail fraud or wire fraud or like trespassing or something minor, and that a very tiny number, a very, very tiny number will be people that actually have like kind of like a violent felony on their record. Those people are already in those people are already inside of these detention facilities to begin with. Because when Donald Trump was claiming that there are hundreds of thousands of people being murdered by undocumented migrants and like no one's doing anything, that meant that the police force under the Biden administration was capturing criminals, right? Let's say like an undocumented migrant did a heinous crime. They did a rape and like they did a murder, right? And then the police would capture this person, and then they would look at their background. They'd look at their record and go, oh my God, he's an undocumented migrant. We have to release him. Do you think that's what was going on? Because if you don't believe that, then the idea that the Biden administration was doing catch and release for like actual criminals is insane. ICE bookings are primarily non-criminals and non-violent offenders. I want to know what kind of violent crimes that they've done as well. This understates the change in interior enforcement against non-criminals. This is mainly because ICE also booked some people into custody who were originally detained by Border Patrol. Hence, the pre-Trump numbers include many non-criminals who had never lived in the United States before. Since then, the Trump administration has put Border Patrol in charge of mass deportation in California and is making interior arrests all along the border, all along both the Mexican and Canadian borders. This means that the pre-Trump and post-Trump numbers are not directly comparable. We cannot say for certain how many peaceful individuals are being whisked off American streets by government agents. Yes, resisting arrest is considered a violent crime, by the way. Would you say that people that Obama admin deported millions as well? They don't think there's an issue with this because Obama did it too. I had an issue when Obama did it as well. But the difference between Barack Obama and like when Democrats are in charge, the major difference is that they consider immediate removal at the border a deportation. There's a difference between internal deportations and border apprehensions. Okay? Both are still uniquely cruel, especially considering that these people are not here to do crimes. Okay? Having said that, the Trump administration will greatly escalate interior removals. Okay? Interior removals are conducted on not people who are doing crimes, but they're conducted on people who have been living here for decades at this point, who are literally playing ball with immigration customs enforcement. They do check-ins with ICE agencies. They have court dates that they're waiting on in front of an immigration judge. I spoke to a journalero in Huntington Park that got gotten detained in a raid at a Home Depot. He's a citizen. They take you to Santa Ana, verify your status, then they let you go. But now you are not at work outside of Home Depot. You're in Santa Ana. Yeah, they do dragnets, and if you're Hispanic, you will get apprehended. And they put you in a goddamn paddy wagon and ship your ass to a facility, and then they do some kind of check. And hopefully your paperwork is intact, because if they find anything when they run a background check, they'll still clap you.
Situation is just totally just blatantly not at all what they said it was. And the people that I know, the liberal people that I know really well, really close people, you know, that I know, warned me that that's what they worried about, that ICE was just going to go after everybody arbitrarily, just grab them all, sort them out, and not really care what kind of damage they're doing to, whether it's a business locally or whether it's...
I work down the street from Santa Ana hot areas, and it's crazy out here. They're triangulating any Home Depot in this area. Currently, they're just walking around gas stations, car washes, picking up anyone who seems brown and may have an accent. As a Latina, it's not even safe for me to take a walk at work, and I'm a citizen. It's insane that we have to be in pairs and be scared for our own safety because of blatant racism. Yeah. What's also crazy is, as a citizen, you do not have to actually cooperate with ICE. Did you know that? Like, when ICE says, give me your ID, as an American citizen, they have no legal right to demand that from you. But at the same time, because it's a legal gray area, they can still detain you. Isn't that crazy? And the only reason why they detain you is because, like, ICE doesn't have jurisdiction over you. You're an American citizen, right? They don't have jurisdiction over you. They will still detain you. And if you try to go out of your way and sue them, as people have, American citizens have sued ICE, it is a long and arduous process, and the penalties are so marginal by design that nobody even attempts to do this. There is no way to, like, put them under a shit ton of paperwork, even though any ICE detention against an American citizen is quite literally an illegal detainment, and you can sue them. Isn't that wild? But we have designed the system. We have designed the system in such a way that even if you were to sue ICE for falsely detaining you as an American citizen, that they have no right to do, and also they did it racistly, obviously, because, like, what's the purpose of this detainment? You're an American citizen. They're ICE agents. They don't know you're an American citizen, technically, right? So what leads them to believe that you are undocumented? I wonder, right? When they're engaging in racist profiling and they detain an American citizen, you could still turn around and sue them after they free you. But because the paperwork is so long, so convoluted, and the awards are so marginal that it doesn't matter, and most people don't do it.
The families that they're destroying, actually, by doing this. I would argue, like I said, I would argue that that's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing. Well, now I have to rethink a lot of things. Buyer's remorse, I don't know, a little bit. Yeah, it's going to reflect on what I did and who I voted for. And I'm going to wonder why they did what they did. And I'd like some kind of explanation, if they cared to give it at all.
And we also want to get to some breaking news. The Department of Homeland Security says a famous Mexican boxer has been arrested by U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement agents and will be deported. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was arrested for overstaying a tourist visa that expired last February. Last week, Chavez was in the ring with YouTuber turned boxer Jake Paul. The DHS says the former middleweight champion will be sent back to Mexico, where he faces organized crime charges involving weapons and explosives. Officials say he's believed to be connected to the cartel.
Yeah, from what I understand, the guy was also a Trump supporter as well. If he won, he wouldn't have gotten deported. There's the both sides chatter was asking for. Yeah, they wouldn't arrest him before the fight because that would have Jake Paul, who's famously a Trump fanboy. I don't know enough details about this guy, but it is crazy that he went from being a Trump supporter to being deported by the Trump admin back to Mexico.